Welcome, Freedom Fighter 1776. I'm your host, Mark Charles Bashaw. Today we have retired Army Captain Seth Ritter on the show. We're going to be talking about the topic of labeled and silenced. And in this world in which we live in, there's plenty of avenues in which individuals have been labeled and silenced specifically the past 5 years. You know, if you came out against anything of the established narratives, the established agendas, the established norms, you're whether it's by family, whether it's by friends, whether it's by institutions, those working within institutions, whether it's by the government itself, oftentimes those individuals were deemed as crazy, conspiracy theorists, and then that's when the gaslighting started. But what I'm going to be talking about is how dangerous and deadly this gaslighting can in reality can be. And we're going to see a real world example of what happens when individuals are gaslit, because not just questioning the norms, not just questioning the agendas, but actually bringing up violations of law within a system and then being targeted for doing so. And that's the focus. The focus is that talking to a military whistleblower, talking to somebody who damn near lost his life due to the toxins that they were going to potentially forcibly inject into his body. And so our guest today, retired Army Captain Seth Ritter. Seth joined the Marine Corps Reserves 2007 as an infantry anti-tank missile man while in college. Shortly after completing training, he deployed to Iraq. After earning his bachelor's degree in history and political science, Seth pursued military service as an active duty officer in the Marines, but was denied due to sequestration and the drawdown. Seth was able to transfer over to the Army to pursue his dream of becoming an officer in 2015. As an infantry officer, Seth served in multiple positions, from platoon leader to executive officer to company commander, where in 2021 he was relieved of command after learning of illegal training practices and whistleblowing online. This put Captain Seth Ritter on a path of discovering multiple illegal activities occurring on his base and around the military. He participated in the quote-unquote digital Dunkirk, helping to evacuate American citizens and Afghan allies during the Afghanistan evacuation in 2021, the COVID vaccine mandate fight, and pursuing accountability for senior officers who have violated the law. Captain Ritter's whistleblowing led to multiple instances of reprisal that saw him arrested, medically detained, behavioral health weaponized against him, and ultimately almost murdered after reporting the commanding general for UCMJ violations. You heard that right. Almost murdered after reporting the commanding general for UCMJ violations. Captain Ritter is medically retired now after 17 years of service to our nation and currently homesteads with his wife and 4 children. Captain Seth Ritter, welcome to the show. Appreciate you coming on. I want to get right down to your story. I want to talk about the time when you reported these UCMJ violations about the commanding general at your base. I want you to talk about and highlight for the audience about what happened at that point in time.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you having me on. It's great to see you, brother, as always. Yeah, so April the 4th, I had prior to reporting it, I had noticed the commanding general having inappropriate online relationships with multiple junior officers and officer candidates on base. It's right out the gate. That's fraternization. It's legal against the UCMJ. And then it's against a specific punitive TRADOC regulation that You cannot have like online interactions. You can't befriend them. You can't like them. You can't be doing all this stuff, right? I knew this because I was a company commander. We had to fill out these forms every single time we had a new batch of trainees. So I had prepared this. Prior to that, I had complained to the IG multiple times, right? Filed IG complaints. And then, and so had others, like a colonel on the base had also filed one of those complaints as well, highlighting his inappropriate online relationships with one of those students. And so I had prepared a document, a criminal complaint in accordance with the Manual for Court Martial Rules 301 through 304. And it's my duty as an officer to report violations of the UCMJ. And so I got all the evidence and enclosures. I made a narrative and a memorandum for record, typed it all up, and I knew that, hey, I've got to report this. I can't report it to my chain of command because there is a conflict of interest there, right?
Right.
After it had been happening months prior with my chain of command, with the weaponization of behavioral health prior to that, being arrested for asking questions about the COVID vaccine on base, and a number of other issues that I had been going through. So it's like chain of command was a no-go. Can't report that, right? And they had no duty they have a duty of responsibility in accordance with the regulations to follow through with it, but I knew that they were not going to. IG was a no-go. I'd already exhausted that route. Congressional complaints, no-go. I'd already exhausted that route. No one wanted to talk to me because if anything was dealt with COVID, they didn't want to have hands on it. So that's Tom Cotton, by the way, for you. So I prepared that memorandum for record, all the evidence, turned it in, went to the MP station and said, hey, like, here you guys go. I want to turn in a criminal complaint against the commanding general for UCMJ violations. They're like, hey, we don't do that.
Real quick. And who was I have a picture of him, but who was the commanding general?
Major General Donahoe, Patrick Donahoe.
And there he is, folks.
Yeah.
Major General in his uniform.
I'm surprised I'm surprised you found a picture of him without his mask on, because that was his command photo.
I should have found that one. I definitely should have.
No. But yeah, so he had, like, the criminal complaint had allegations and evidence to support the claims for certain UCMJ violations. But prior to this, he had conducted multiple UCMJ violations that was reported by that colonel.
Right. And for the audience's awareness, we have Captain Sean Bezvichin, who also reported violations of federal law with the whole injection COVID-19 mandates to this general as well, and got a GOMAR from him.
Yeah.
For refusing to participate with the weaponized experimental injections. But sorry, I just
absolutely. I just thought it was important for context to mention that. So turn that in. This was about 11 a.m. So I went to the MPs. They said, hey, we don't deal with that. Maybe CID. And so I was like, okay, I'll go turn it into CID. So I went to CID, said, hey, I've got some allegations against the commanding general. I witnessed UCMJ violations. I would like it reported. Here's all the stuff. Here's all the evidence, the narrative. By the regulation, this has to be reported to his commanding officer.
Right.
And so they're like, oh, okay, let's take a look at this. So they sat me down, asked me a couple of like generalized questions about it. And then they're like, well, we got to take a look at it. So they went back. I sat there for about an hour and a half. During that time period, dude came back in just to make some small talk, asked me if I had a recording device on me, like out of the blue, which I did, because prior to this, there was a bunch of reprisal actions that had occurred. And so I knew that,
smart.
Hey, it is my word against somebody else. Georgia is a single party consent state for recording.
Right.
As long as it's not in sensitive areas. And so I was like, hey, law's behind me. I want to cover my back, because I will lose 10 times out of 10 in any of these legal arguments if I don't have evidence. So he asked me if I had one. I was truthful. And I said, yes. And he's like, hey, please can you turn this off and turn this over to me? And I was like, well, I really don't want to, but I will. Like, I'm not here to be a confrontational, right? I'm here for like y'all's help in this endeavor. And so I wanted to meet him halfway. So I turned it off, gave it to him. They left. Another 30 minutes or so pass. Somebody comes in and they tell me, hey, thanks for coming in. A member of your chain of command will be by to pick you up here in a little bit. And I'm like, well, what are you talking about? I drove here. Like I can just leave. He's like, no. We need to, we need to figure out what's going on. And somebody from your chain of command is going to come pick you up. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. I have broken no law. I have broken no regulation. I'm doing literally the thing I'm supposed to do as an officer. Why can't I just get in my vehicle that's outside and go back to my unit and report to them? Right. If they want to have a meeting and talk to me, I can just go and talk to them. Nope, absolutely not. So the chain of command sends another captain over. He escorts me back to the unit where I talk to the deputy commanding officer. That deputy commanding officer, so he's like the second in charge for the brigade. So like you have the brigade commander, and then you have a DCO who's in charge,
right.
who's while the brigade commander is gone, he's basically in charge. And the brigade commander was gone at that time. So have a conversation with him, and he's grilling me. Hey, so what did you do this morning? And I was like, hey, I went through the sequence of events, told him what happened. He's like, well, why did you report that? Why didn't you go to the IG? And I didn't want to, I'd already had 2 active IG complaints out there. It's not his business that I have made prior IG complaints, right? You have no duty or responsibility to talk to any of your chain of command to disclose that 1, you made a IG complaint, or 2, what the nature of that IG complaint is.
Right.
And so I didn't want to talk to him about that. I was like, hey, just kind of leave it at that and let him berate me about the steps to the IG as if I didn't already know.
Right.
Then he tells me, we got the minute-long conversation, one-sided conversation, reaches a lull, and he goes, well, I think you know what's going to happen next. And I legitimately did not. He's like, we're going to get you checked out. And to me, that went straight to, oh, they're going to the behavioral health thing again.
Wow.
Right. They're going to go to the behavioral health thing again. And I was like, hey, sir, please don't, because, I knew the steps to command referring an individual to behavioral health, especially under an emergency mental health check.
There has to be legitimate evidence.
Yeah,
Correct.
absolutely. I had to do this multiple times as commanding officer for trainees who were legitimately suicidal, like individuals who were cutting themselves 30 times on each arm, expressing suicide ideation towards themselves and homicidal ideation towards others, writing it down, not just a trainee's claim against another. Right. So it's I had practiced this multiple times legitimately for actual individuals that needed an emergency intervention, right? Because they're having some sort of crisis. Mm-hmm. And so I knew the steps. I was like, hey, I'm not incapacitated. I am not a threat to myself, not a threat to anyone else. I haven't indicated any of that to anyone. And so thanks, sir, but no thanks. That's not how the DODI works. That's not how the Army regulations works. I didn't say it in that manner, right? I was being very respectful. Didn't want to give him any ammo. Of course. But he's like, hey, because of the events this morning, he's specifically referring to me turning in the criminal complaint. We want to get you checked out. Right.
So again, a criminal complaint that should have been under investigation, and nothing should have been disclosed to him because he was part of the chain of command being investigated.
Yeah.
But
how did he
I digress.
Yeah. So what ended up you connect those 2 dots and it's, CID called my chain of command. Why would they have called my chain of command?
Well, there's another issue too, obviously. Why is CID communicating back with the chain of command that's being reported? Exactly. And who are those agents? What are their names? Yeah. Did you get signatures of any of those agents on any sort of documentation?
No,
did they give you a recording device back?
They did give me my recording device back, which was I'm happy for that. I'm happy they didn't delete all of the prior recordings. I think I have the name of one of the individuals who was a lackey that was sent in, but he wasn't the individual that he was like, hey, I'm new here. Cause he was the person that greeted me at the door. He's like, hey, I'm new here. Let me go talk to my boss because they don't know about this. All
right. So let's fast forward to now they're going to get you checked out.
Yeah.
And what happens at that point?
So they take me to, I get escorted with that captain to the behavioral health, embedded behavioral health, which is, down the road.
So let me ask you this question real quick. Was that escort also part of your chain of command?
He was a member of the unit. So I worked in the brigade plans office. I
So
was
another conflict of interest. Got it.
Yeah,
Roger.
and the other conflict of interest here is if you have an escort, or if you're assigning an escort, that person needs to be senior in your rank to that individual that's being escorted, or senior in like time and service, right? Because there's only so many majors on base. There's too many, first off, right? And there's only so many that were available to escort someone to one of these appointments. So they got a junior officer, both in like time and service and experience, right? Because I had been in command. This individual was fresh out of Triple C, so the command career course, and yeah. So I was like, okay, but I'll play ball, right? I'm not here to just make waves. I want to get through this because as of midnight that night, I'm supposed to be on leave to go officiate a wedding for my sister-in-law.
Gotcha.
And so he escorts me to the embedded behavioral health. And at this point, this is like something I'm very well,
right. You're privy to
rehearsed.
The system and how it can be weaponized against you.
Yeah. Because
members.
It had already happened. It had already happened prior. And thank God that behavioral health specialist that I saw the first time, it was actually a reasonable individual and without any sort of, I guess bias towards me, or motives, ulterior motive or agenda. Yeah. Because she cleared me.
Real quick, Seth, just for the audience out there. Now we're talking to somebody who completely understands how the system can be weaponized against an individual, but there's many people out there, whether it's private citizens or institutional public servants, who are very naive to how the system can truly be weaponized against them, especially going back to my introduction of this video, where if you question any sort of the established norms, established agendas, or things like that, or just take the COVID-19 injections, these vaccines that if you questioned against those, what could possibly happen? So we're talking to somebody who has immense experience on how this system could be weaponized, and was not naive going into this.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
So what happened?
Yeah, so I mean, just to touch on that real quick, like the standard operating procedure for higher headquarters, whenever there's a whistleblower that's involved in something, or anything that they want to kind of sweep around the rug, turn that individual's testimony and muddy the waters as much as possible. And the way they do that, yes, discredit them as much as possible. And the way they do that is through behavioral health. We've seen that multiple times. Yes,
and human cognition.
Yes,
and human cognition, because if they can slap a label of diagnostic on you, a diagnostics label on you, you have lost your standing as a sound of mind, competent human.
Yeah,
legitimately.
Exactly. And so anything you said prior to that and anything you say after that, anything that you claim, no matter what the evidence is, you are instantly discredited in the eyes of the public and the eyes of the law a lot of times. And so that's what they had tried to do prior and failed. And that's what they were trying to do this time. And eventually failed.
And they almost succeeded.
They almost succeeded in their ultimate goal, which was silencing me completely.
Yeah. And I want to get to that. But first, I want to play a video of the behavioral health. And what do you remember this lady's name? She's a public servant, by the way.
Yeah, Larissa Carpenter. She's going to claim in that video, I believe I know which one you're talking about, that she's a licensed healthcare professional. She was a social worker. So maybe licensed to perform social work activities within a limited scope of behavioral health, but not licensed to, do medication, not licensed to admit anyone to the hospital. So just getting that out there.
But at the same time, anything you say will be used against you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so this is an audio recording, again, single party consent state of recording. You were smart enough because, again, you weren't naive to how the system can be weaponized against you. You went in there with a recording device, and this is only a clip, ladies and gentlemen. If you want all the fine details of this story, take a screenshot of this right now. Pull out your iPhone, pull out your smartphone. This will bring you directly to Seth's story. All of the details, all of the evidence-based facts, all of the prescription meds that they were going to use ultimately silence him. and all of the surveillance they did on him, his commanding general, etc. So take a screenshot of that, go to the direct link, save it for after this podcast, and you can read up all on this. So you're not just taking the words on what we're saying here. You're looking at evidence-based facts, and please share this around. Anyway, I want to jump into this video real quick. So we got this video. Take a listen to this, folks.
I don't know you from anything other than meeting you today and being able to read your records. You don't know me from Adam. But I want you to, if you don't hear anything else that I say to you today, hear me when I say this. When I say something like this to somebody, I don't take it lightly. And I don't say it to hear myself talk. I'm making a clinical recommendation as a licensed provider in the DoD system. And my ethical duty is to make you aware of your choices and the possible negative outcomes on your health if you do not follow the clinical recommendations of two healthcare providers who really don't care one whit about things that are happening other than your well-being. We have...
That's why questions about my voting and
I don't care
that
about
was appropriate.
Voting. You vote for whoever you want.
Well, that was never mind. I think that
I don't
we've
have
got
a dog in
things to
that
do.
hunt.
That was inappropriate. But, okay.
But what I'm saying is, they asked me to evaluate you. I have. Something is wrong.
Shocking.
So something is wrong, and it's medical, sir.
Okay.
My recommendation is that you let us admit you. Let Dr. Mangle hear everything that you have to say.
So first question is this, Seth. What in the heck was she doing asking you politically motivated questions?
Yeah.
And what did she ask you? That's number one. And number two, if she didn't know you from Adam, how is she making some sort of recommendations on who you are in... She's got this opportunity. She has you in real life, in her office, in her medical facility, whatever, to really just talk to you and figure out what's going on here, if anything, which obviously there was nothing going on as far as medically goes or any things. But, you know, what the heck was going on there if she doesn't know you from Adam?
Yeah, extremely valid points. So to answer your question, well, first off, I kick myself to this day that I did not record the actual doctor's, like the appointment, or the initial interaction with her, where she brought me back and did like a 45 minute mental health exam or interview with me. Right, I should have done that, but I was nervous because I didn't know exactly what the rules were with providers, because I'd never done this before.
But here's the thing: affidavits of truth are powerful testimony.
Yeah,
if you swear under oath that happened, she's going to have to rebut that and say it didn't happen.
Right.
I mean,
right.
The fact that you brought it up here alludes to, you know, and she didn't want to talk about it here.
Correct. And I captured that in like a memorandum of record, which is legally admissible evidence, immediately afterwards. So, you know, I've already attested and claimed to that. Now, so what she had asked in there. So as when conducting a mental status exam, they're like, oh, hey, do you see ghosts? Do you see things that are not there? Do you hear voices? Stuff like that. Right. And so she went through the normal kind of like questions of, hey, are these things happening to you? So we can determine if there's a larger mental issue going on. And then it took a really sharp detour into like politically motivated stuff. She asked, hey, who's the current president of the United States? And I'm like, okay, I guess I could, you know, if someone doesn't know if someone has no idea like what year it is or whatever, maybe there's something tied here. And I was like, Joseph Biden, to my knowledge. Right. And then she goes, do you believe that there was voter fraud in the 2020 election? And I'm pretty taken aback at this point. And I'm like, ma'am, I kind of paused for a second because of course I believe that I can see with my eyes the evidence, right? That all of us saw, right?
Yeah,
Come on.
Pretty freaking obvious. But
yeah,
that's
beside the point because in this interaction, it has no bearing on my mental status at all, and cannot and should not ever be used. Like what my personal opinion on a political topic is. And so I paused for a second, kind of collected myself and my words. And I said, hey ma'am, whether or not I believe that there was voter fraud in the election, it has no bearing on anything. I was like, I know that I voted in the election. I know that I mailed my absentee ballot into my state, and then I know that vote was counted based upon the feedback from the Secretary of State, right? And then she was upset when I answered that way. When I didn't
give her what she wanted.
Correct. So she was
politically motivated.
Yes, she was visibly upset with what had happened. With and she even said, she's like, that's a very political answer.
And I want to remind the audience real quick, this is a public servant. She's a GS employee. Marissa Carpenter, GS employee who takes an oath of office on an SF-61, also takes a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, to uphold medical standards and ethics. But, I digress, just for context.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Yeah. And so when I had answered, oh, hey, Joseph Biden is the president, forgot to mention this aspect, is she got this nasty sour look on her face, like she was expecting some other answer. And she sneered at me and she says, do you really believe that? Whoa. I mean, lady, who's got the mental health issue here? Is it claimed to be me, or is it actually you? If you're not believing what I'm saying, how are we ever going to get through this?
Well, so that's I mean, you brought up an incredibly important point. And that's why, to the audience out there, that's why this is incredibly dangerous, what's going on. When you're fed our whole lives to believe something, when you go through a government-funded public health, public school education, and you're programmed with what norm is, or you watch the television and it tells you safe and effective over and over again for these injections that you need to take, you must take, do your part, and you start questioning that around your friends, your family, your coworkers, the gaslighting begins.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the dangerous part about this is if you go and you lay down on that bed and start talking to a psychologist, and you give them you start challenging their world views and perceptions on the world, you are going to be the crazy one.
Yeah.
Because guess what? They're going to diagnose you because they're projecting their fear on the fact that you're challenging their world views with logical, rational, most of the time, actual evidence.
Yeah.
You're challenging that and they can't accept it. So what do? They get fear first, then they get mad. And the best way for them to do it is, now we're going to weaponize the institution, the medical, military industrial complex against you. We're going to label you as a psychotic individual and give you antipsychotics, which actually induce psychosis and all this other stuff. Anyway, I'm ranting here, but I'm ranting very, very intentionally ranting.
Yeah.
And so, Seth, so what happens at this point? So in the video, she talks about she doesn't know you from Adam, but she knows there's something seriously wrong with you.
Yeah. So in the course of our conversation, she had another thing she asked me was January 6th. She said, what does your organization think about January 6th? Right. So whoa, lady, what organization are you talking about? And that's what I told her. I was like, man, what are you talking about? What organization? The only organization that I belong to is the United States Army. Right. And the only loyalty that I have is to the Constitution of the United States and the people of the United States. Right.
Amen.
So what are you getting at here? And she obviously hated those answers. And it's where did that come from? Either she came up with that on her own, or someone had because the chain of command, when you call and you say, hey, this person needs to be seen by you, they can pick the provider oftentimes. Sometimes it's whoever's available that they can also recommend, hey, I want him to be seen by this person. So that's an important thing to note, that could have been something that was set up.
So the chronology of this, you file a CID complaint.
Yep.
They call your chain of command.
Yep.
Your chain of command then does a command-directed behavioral health evaluation. You find yourself in this clearly this lady's office, Marissa Carpenter's office, and she says there is in fact something wrong with you.
No, she actually she admitted that there was nothing wrong with me, right?
So there's nothing wrong. So
no,
she admits
nothing mental. No, so like what that recording, that brief recording you played later on in that, she's on the phone with Major Mangle, right? And in it she says, hey, he passed a MSE, right? She lets that slip. So MSE, mental status exam, that's the entire thing that we had done in her office privately. So if I pass it,
real quick, Major Mangle.
Yep.
Here he is right here. So this is Major Mangle.
Yeah.
Clearly he had to put his pronouns out there. Internal medicine. So he was the provider for your quote unquote situation.
Yeah. So she didn't have the authority to prescribe medicine, admit me to the hospital. And so he was the one that would had to have done that. And that he's the one that did eventually sign off on that medication. And that's not the last time I have interaction with him.
So you talk about he did in fact sign off on the medication.
Yeah.
What? And folks, again, screenshot this, go over, because you're not going to be able to read the medication that's on this next screenshot right here. So this is the medication, and this isn't all of it. There was about, I want to say there was about 8 medications that were prescribed to you that day.
That's correct.
So you go into this meeting with Marissa Carpenter. She says there's nothing wrong with you, and then they proceed to prescribe you an array of psychotropics.
Yeah. So she's like, hey, he passed the MSC on that phone call, and then we had a very disgusting conversation about my Second Amendment rights and the personally owned weapons that I owned and my wife owned. Right. She was attempting to have us do something illegal and that's in a violation of our rights. And that's in that link that you posted up. Right. And so I don't really want to hit on that a lot. She ends up saying, hey, you do have to go do some blood work, and get a CT scan or whatever. And then a urinalysis, and you can, and then after that, if you want to get admitted, get admitted. If you don't, it's up to you. Right. And I knew that was the case. Because service members have patient rights. And if you do not want to undergo medical treatment, you do not have to.
Right. And for service members out there who might be listening, you need to understand it's called behavioral health services.
Yes.
And you always have, you never lose the right to consent or not consent. But when you do so, you must exert that consent in writing and in a recorded official manner, because they have incredible amount of tricks and an incredible amount of pressure and coercion to get you to tacitly consent without you even knowing.
Yes.
If
you don't consent, and you don't consent in a proper way, I guess is the way I would describe that.
Right.
They're going to hit you with an Article 92, like a failure to obey a direct order. Right.
So what justification did they have to do the treatments? So those treatments on you?
The urinalysis, the blood test for the drugs and alcohol is what they're testing for. You can have a service member go and do as a command action. You can say, hey, I believe this person's here's my probable cause, and I believe this person might be under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Okay, evidence. Understood that. Right. That's
probable cause evidence.
Yeah. Technically a legal order. I'm not going to make a stink about it because it's technically legal. Right. I don't know what their probable cause was. That was probably fabricated. However, I'm not going to rock the boat. So we go to the hospital, they pull me back into the ER, take my blood work. We do a CAT scan. We do a urinalysis. I'm sitting back there for a little bit. And then lo and behold, they're like, oh, hey, you're going to be admitted to the behavioral health ward. And when it comes to patient rights, as soon as you are not in your faculties, you are like clinically determined to not be in control of yourself, right? Then your ability to consent or refuse medication goes out the window, right?
Right.
You no longer, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So here we are, and this is probably about like 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm sitting there and they're like, hey, you're going to go up to the 4th floor. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Right. Because like, that's not correct. I've done nothing wrong. I've done everything within the law. I've been describing people in detail, what the regulations say, what the paragraphs within the regulations say, like trying to tell them like, hey, this is what the law says. This is what the regulation is. This is how these things are supposed to be done. And this is all reprisal for whistleblowing, for me reporting that. Like we can't be doing this and going through it. Right. And they finally come back. This is kind of later on in the night, and they're like, "Hey, yeah, you're gonna have to come up with me." They have this like burly orderly, that's from the 4th floor, and he's like, "I'm here to escort you up to the 4th floor, right?" By
force, Roger.
Yeah. And I just kind of am in the little room they have in the emergency room for patients, and I was like, "Hey, can you show me who signed off on that? Like, can you show me the doctor's order for that?"
Yep.
I was like, because he has to have some sort of like justification, some sort of medical justification for that. I was like, I'm not a threat to myself. No one's communicated to me that I'm a threat to myself, threat to others, and I'm certainly not incapacitated right now. So this cannot happen without some sort of medical justification that I'm not aware of. And they're like, it's like the Windows screen shutting down, like beep boop boop boop. Right. And so that you could just see their minds being blown and like, whoa, no one's ever asked us that. Like, I don't know what that means, which is disturbing because like, if you're in these fields, like you should understand the legality of what you're doing and how you're doing it. And especially when your job may interfere with another individual's rights, you should know that. Just like the back of your hand, you should know that so that you don't interfere with another individual's rights. So
absolutely.
Like this plays out, this like back and forth thing plays out until about 2 o'clock in the morning when like Commander Rob Green and Dr. Lee Vliet from the Truth for Health Foundation had got my, whoever the doctor, on-call doctor in charge of the ER was, finally were able to like get him on the phone and basically like, hey.
So, real quick, how, and for the audience who doesn't know, Commander Rob Green, he's still active duty Navy. He authored the book called Defending the Constitution Behind Enemy Lines. He's been a huge advocate in standing up against these injustices on the inside of the military. And then Doc Lee Vliet, amazing advocate for our service members.
Absolutely.
Both of us worked on the Military Advisory Council, trying to get proper risk communication strategies out there. Go over to truthforhealth.org. She's incredible. Has incredible protocols and just an awesome resource. So how did they get a hold of you? How did they get a hold of the doctors?
So
how
I didn't have my
know? How did they know?
I didn't have my phone. I had my phone and it died about like 4 or 5 o'clock after I had been back in the back of the ER. And so I was communicating this to my wife and to like other individuals. Right.
Gotcha.
And those other individuals got an emergency message to Rob Green and Dr. Lee Vliet. And that's how they were aware of the situation that was going on.
And your attorney.
Right? And my attorney, yes. David.
David Wilson. Great guy. Shout out David Wilson.
Awesome dude.
Patriot attorney out there.
Yeah. And so they ended up, Rob is like calling the ER like multiple times over and over. Hey, I'm demanding to speak with Captain Seth Ritter. Demand to speak to Captain Seth Ritter. Like I'm an active duty 05. Like this is like medical detention is against the law. This is inappropriate, blah, blah, blah. And like, eventually they got frustrated enough to where one of the staff down there at the ER gave me their cell phone so that I could contact my wife and my lawyer and Dr. Lee Vliet, right? And so that ended up, go ahead.
So I want to go back to the medication real quick that they had prescribed you. I have a list here. So they had ready for you Ativan, Haldol, Benadryl, hydroxyzine, trazodone.
Yep.
And so and on and again, everybody go over, look at, take a picture of that, look at the details of this, because the screenshot I have, it's blurry, but you can look at these medications. They were going to, if you rejected,
Forcibly inject.
They said if member rejects, they had orders to forcibly inject you. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
And folks out there, if these are taken together, extreme sedation and confusion occurs.
Yes.
From Ativan, Haldol, hydroxyzine, trazodone, breathing slows down, paradoxical agitation when they say they're trying to control agitation, right?
Yeah.
You have heart risks. You've got sudden cardiac risks with these medications taken together. You have over sedation. You've got vomiting while unconscious. You've got all sorts of things. So they had these cocktails ready. And again, they had them. These are the orders right here.
Yeah.
You can see that little bogus, that little classification. It's not a real classification.
It's not,
CUI on top.
And that's on my own medical records. I can provide them to whoever I want to. So
And so they had this concoction ready for you.
Yep.
So you're able to get, so your lawyers, so again, your attorney, David Wilson, truthforhealth.org, Dr. Leafley, you've got a Navy commander. They're able to secure you outside and give you and allow you to get your freedom back and get your rights back outside of the facility.
Yeah.
So now so this all starts at what time in the morning when you filed that CID complaint?
So this was about 11 o'clock is when I went into CID.
And then 2 a.m.
Correct.
You're finally, after this whole debacle, you're finally, because of the advocacy and the warriors, the other warriors that were able to help speak on your behalf, they were able to intervene, interpose on the situation, and at 2 a.m. you're out, right? You're in your car driving, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And you're supposed to be on leave, military leave.
Yeah. So they had gotten the doctor, like Dr. Leafley was like, hey, if you do not release him, like, what's the medical justification? If you don't have any medical justification, he's got to go. And David was like, hey, like, that's what you're doing is illegal. You can't do this. And eventually that frustrated him enough to that doctor that was in charge of the ER to say, I don't know why he's here. Wow. All right, man. Hey, as soon as you know,
I don't know why he's here.
Which is disgusting.
I don't know why he's here, but I'm ready to fill him with a concoction of psychotropics and kill his ass.
Because 15 minutes prior to that, dude, he had been in there talking to me like, just go up there. We're going to do another evaluation. It's going to be okay, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, wait, dude, if you don't know why I'm here, why were you all gung-ho about getting me up there in the first place?
So again, this guy.
No, so that wasn't that was the guy who signed off on the medication, right? Because
he signed off on the medication, right?
Yes, but
he signed off on the medication.
Yeah, different doctor in charge of the ER,
right?
And so he's like, I don't know why he's here. I don't know. And at that point, dude,
these medications together could cause death.
Yes, I mean, and I have a like a heart condition that is still within service limits, right, for me to continue to serve. But it had, dude, I'm telling you, had I gone up there and consented to go up there, they would have given me all that, because of course I don't want any medication, right? And they would have forcibly, it's listed on that thing is, hey, give to patient if patient refuses.
Yep.
And
they would have made up something.
Yes, and they specifically, what's disturbing is like the three things that are not supposed to be used together based upon like the drug fact sheets, like, and the dangers for cardiac arrest, for cardio issues, for respiratory issues, all of that stuff. They specifically listed on there, use with this drug, use with this other drug. And so that's the issue is like, one, they're in super high doses. And then two, they are listed, you will use this drug with this other drug that will cause death. Right. Folks, and so like, that's disturbing, dude. That's just extremely disturbing.
Well, this is the modus operandi of the institution of the military medical industrial complex and how we silence individuals that don't go along to get along. So fast forward, you're out of the hospital. I want to play this video. You're out of the hospital. You're driving off base. And check this out, folks. This is what happens.
Can you say that again a little bit louder, please?
Can you go back to the ER
So there,
and get a mental evaluation?
the brigade commander is ordering me to go get a mental health evaluation at the ER for let's see here.
And a mental health
For a mental health risk, right? There was no risk that was actually communicated. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, that was accurate. Okay,
because you are assessed as a risk.
because I'm assessed as a risk. There we go. That's what it is. All right.
Did you tell him that the doctor? Yeah, and did you tell him that the doctor there said you're free to go?
Yes, actually, well, the
So
individual.
I was there. There was no paperwork. There was no paperwork showing he was fully discharged, sir.
He's saying that there's no paperwork saying that I was fully discharged. Well, this is because I was free to go. The doctor said he was all of the tests, everything else was done. That he was going
But
to
there
do.
was no lawful order to keep him there.
Right, but
and
there
the
was-
doctor kept saying he didn't know what he was supposed to be doing.
That's correct. Doctor said had no idea. You were there. You were
Yes,
present.
I was there.
Right,
But
and-
you're supposed to do your paperwork showing that you are discharged.
That's not how. No, I've never left the hospital and had to sign paperwork that I'm discharged. They're just all right, hey, your appointment's done. You're good. That's not a thing, Right?
They send him out on leave.
I'm also on leave.
So here you are. You're free to go. Doctor says you're free to go. You're driving off base, and they have the MPs.
Waiting for us. Yeah.
Somebody orders the MPs to pull you over before you get to the base exit gate.
Yep.
Right.
We got.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
my question is too, who? I know I've been in the military a long time. You don't have captains running around patrol at 2 a.m. Pulling people over. You
Yeah.
have them in the talk, right? And you've got your enlisted going out there but for you, they've got a captain out there.
Yeah. So he was the individual that was my escort. He was the second escort that was assigned to me because the first escort, his issues happened. It's described in the Twitter thing with his.
So he was your
he had
escort, and then he was pulling you over.
Yes. So this was that where he's talking right there is about minute 45 of us being pulled over on my wife, my children, being pulled over on the side of the road while I'm on a leave status. Because as soon as I left the hospital, called the brigade staff duty and was like, hey, I want to sign out on leave. I can sign out on leave over the phone as a captain. So that's what I did. Because once you're on leave, there's an additional layer of steps that have to occur for them to do things to you, right? Or for them to recall you, right? And so I knew that, I had to do that. I had to call out on leave to get that extra layer of protection just in case.
Wow.
And I'm glad I did, because 3 blocks down the road, they had the MPs waiting for us and pulled us over. And so that captain was the escort who was present for everything in the hospital back in the ER, present for everything. And so not the most intelligent individual on the planet, also junior to me in both, time and service and experience.
Complete useful idiot. Roger.
Yes. So he's just regurgitating what had been told to him. And at that point, the brigade commander was trying to order me back to the hospital. And they were trying to use this ridiculous verbiage, I didn't properly sign out from the ER, which is not a thing. I've been to the ER, at that point, it had probably been about 12 times from the 2 different times I was assigned at Fort Benning. And so for various reasons, for both myself and my children, never have I ever had to sign paperwork to be discharged or had to do anything like that.
So
yeah.
So now you're finally a back and forth. You've got your attorney on the phone. You've got Doc Leave from truthforhealth.org. You've got Commander Green that had to interpose. Now you're free to go. And folks, I can't possibly get to all the details, the atrocious details of this story. I can just simply tell you this. They treated Captain Seth Ritter, a whistleblower, somebody who was doing exactly what he was trained to do, as a terrorist.
Yeah.
Because when it came to your board of inquiry, at his board of inquiry, folks, and again, go over, check out the full story. Go over here, check out the full story. At his board of inquiry, they had surveillance cameras and police positioned all over his board of inquiry, Anybody who doesn't know what a board of inquiry is, it's basically an administrative court martial to separate officers from the military. They had it set up, surveilled, all that stuff. Seth, we're running out of time here, but before we go, your story is so egregious, so disgusting, and frankly, if it wasn't for the position of the foundation of these other individuals, arguably you probably wouldn't be with us. And at the very end of this,
I'd be dead. Yeah, I'd be
end
dead.
of this, I'm gonna show the end result. Unfortunately, the end result of what happens when a system is weaponized against an individual. Seth, where can people find you? Final words.
So they can find me on. I only have one social media, and that's Twitter, for a very intentional reason. And on there, I try to add. It's down there at the bottom that at ds_Seth Ritt. That's me. And like I try to advocate for UCMJ change, regulation change, IG change in the military, because I don't want this to happen to anyone else, because I was extremely blessed and extremely lucky, right? Extremely blessed that I had people intervene on my behalf, because if not, I would be dead. I would be absolutely dead. I wouldn't be able to see my young boys grow up. And that's disturbing. It's extremely disgusting that's what would have been the eventuality had they been able to go through with it, because those psychotropics, the haloperidol, trazodone, all that stuff, extremely dangerous substances that cause people to die. Extremely dangerous. And I think that you've got some experience with that.
Yeah. Well, brother, I love you. We love you. We, the people, love you. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story. God bless you, brother. Take care. Folks, like I said, unfortunately, I'm going to leave you with a situation of how this results when they truly do roll you up and some of these psychotropics are ingested. Unfortunately, it was with my own personal situation with my twin brother back November 10th, 2024. My twin brother took his own life after being coerced, after being gaslit by his entire environment, after being pushed into this medical military industrial complex as a veteran, and after the Veterans Association started coercing him to take some of the psychotropics.
Michael's devotion to his family and his sense of duty made the profound struggles he faced in his final months even more heartbreaking. The challenges and concerns he carried were an immense burden he bore, often in silence. These concerns were not only his own, but reflected the failings of a broader system that too often leaves people isolated, unseen, and even silenced. Michael's struggles were also compounded by a medical system that prioritizes profits over people, one that slaps labels on people and coerces big pharma toxins, which exacerbate problems, resulting in alarming statistics of injury and death. These systemic failures left him isolated, silenced, and ultimately vulnerable to despair.
Folks, please do your best to share this, get it out there. And if you're out there and you're struggling and you're being gaslit by your environment and people are calling you crazy or conspiracy theorists or doubting your alternative thought process and ideas and opinions, you're not alone. You are not alone. And just know that you're loved. And first and foremost, you're loved by God Almighty. And God bless, folks. Much love.